Welcome. This is Chapter 3, Part 4, when we're talking about construction types and building heights and areas. This portion, of course, is building heights and areas. Okay, I want you to understand, because you've hopefully watched the other videos, and we know that the construction type directly relates to the overall size of a building. The building size is usually determined at the time the building is originally constructed. So what we've got to do is we have to work with our contractor, work with an architect, and they're trying to determine how big the building is. And there are certain charts and graphs within this Chapter 5 of the IVC Code Book that can tell you how big it can be and then what construction type you should use based on the height of the building you want and the area that you have. Okay, let's talk about building area. That means the area included within surrounding exterior walls or exterior walls and firewalls. Exclusive, of course, of vent shafts. We talk about vent shafts and courts. And areas of the building not provided with surrounding walls shall be included in the building area if such is included within the horizontal projection of the roof or floor. If the roof projects out, you have to cover what's below it. The basement. We've kind of talked a little bit about basements earlier. That's a portion of building that is partly or completely below grade. A basement shall be considered as a story above grade when the finished surface of the floor above the basement is more than 6 feet above grade floor or more than 6 feet above the finished ground level for more than 50% of the building. So like if the building is angling, remember back to our little scenario, we have a building here and the ground is sloping and we have a basement. If 50% of the total building is below or more than 12 feet above the finished ground level is at any point. Grade plane. Grade plane is a reference representing the average of finished ground level adjoining the building at the exterior walls, where we have finished ground levels that slope away from the building. So sometimes we may end up having a ground plane. We may end up having something away from it to be able to have all of this at ground plane, okay? Even though the ground around this perimeter slopes. It's really established kind of at the lowest point where the area between the building and the lot line. So when we talk about more than 6 feet from the building, because here, if you go away 6 feet from the building, between the building and the point 6 feet, then of course all of this would be considered your grade plane. Height of the building. Remember, that's the vertical distance from the grade plane to the average height of the highest roof surface. We've gone over that. If the roof slopes, we're doing the average. So back to our building here, if it has a sloped roof, we're going to the average of this. Not the highest point, but the average. Height of the story, the vertical distance from the top to top of two successive finished floor surfaces. So we're doing finished floor to finished floor when we're looking at it. Story, the portion of a building included between the upper surface of a floor and the upper surface of the floor above or the roof next above. So allowable areas. These are really essential ingredients in the determination of allowable areas. We've got to know the type and the amount of combustibles due to the building use. Like, what is the contents within that building? How much are you putting in there? If it's a factory and it's something that could have combustibles in it, that makes a difference. The amount of combustibles contained in the construction of the building. So we may have our structures like our columns, our roof structure, and everything may be non-combustible, but then how many of those non-load bearing walls and partitions are we putting within there. Features such as automatic sprinkler systems, open yards, firewalls, all those make a difference within when we're trying to determine our heights and areas. Okay, the limitations for maximum building area are intended to limit the size of the fire that potentially may develop. What we're trying to do is we want to have loss of property damage, and we want to make sure that life safety is considered to the number of occupants. So how many our occupant load is, we want to make sure that all of those people can get out of the building. In addition to, we want to make sure that the firefighters' accessibility can get in to be able to put the fire out, and we want to have protection for the firefighters so that they will be safe as they go in. So, determine allowable floor area of a building. We want to determine the basic allowable area based on occupancy and type of construction. So when you're looking at this chapter 5 in our code book, it's of course going to tell you a few things. The one thing I want to point out, and really in section 504 and through here in section 503, it talks about building height and area shall not exceed the limits specified in table 503 on the type of construction in section 602. But if you look over here, it says where a building is equipped throughout with an approved automatic sprinkler systems, okay, in accordance with section 903.3.1.1, the value specified in table 503 for maximum building height is increased by 20 feet, and the maximum number of stories is increased by 1. So it's saying if you have a total building that is has a approved sprinkler system, it can increase the height, and of course, it can increase the square footage. So I want you to read this section 504. Very important to be able to look at this. You're going to see that it can be increased by 200%. So it is amazing how much more we can increase if everything has a sprinkler system. In the building area with exterior walls, remember exclusive of vents, shafts, and courts are not permitted in surrounding areas, are usable under the horizontal projection. So if you have a roof that projects in the floor area below, you have to count it. Remember, mezzanine floor areas do not count or contribute to the building area. If you don't know what a mezzanine is or a basement, remember back to the beginning, it gave you definitions of those. A mezzanine, of course, is just like a half of a area, a balcony type area within a first floor or a second floor. Okay, so kind of visual here. So what we're talking about, we're looking at structurally here, from column to column or fire barrier to fire barrier, if this roof didn't overhang. But where the walls, of course, and there's overhangs, then you've got to figure from overhang to overhang if it's usable area within the facility. So here we are looking at it. Usable in calculations, where walls are provided. Where walls are not provided, of course, exclusive of vents and shafts. So let's look at the table in our code book. I always say table 503. It's on the next page. And I want you to kind of understand how this works. Let's review this table. You can look at it or follow along in your IBC code book. Look at table 503, allowable building heights and areas. All right, remember we had the different types of construction. Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, Type 4, heavy timber. Type 5, I called stick, which is made out of 2x4s, 2x5s. And then you have heights in feet. Even though it may tell you how many stories it is, this is the ultimate feet you can do. So that means if you look here, it says S for stories. It says 5 stories. but this is the ultimate height that you can have of those 5 stories. All right, so S is stories, A is area. Because remember, back from column to column or roof edge to roof edge if it applies. And that is your square footage that you can have. All of these are the different types of your occupancies that you may have. So looking at this may make a difference. If you have assembly and you're looking at S, okay, how many stories, and we're looking at a building type 3A, that means we can only go 3 stories, and the 3 stories cannot be over 65 in height, and the square footage of each of those stories is 14,000 square feet. Okay. Now, you can look here at mercantile stories. If you're looking at type 2, 11, the area, of course, can be unlimited. But if I was to look over here at the other type here in mercantile, I type 5A, okay, that is saying that it can be only 3 stories and only 14,000 square feet per story. Okay, so let's go back and let's do some scenarios so that you can understand it. We're going to help a client with a new restaurant. Now, remember, we've learned a little bit about there's questions that we have to ask. Remember, some of those questions is, how many people are you trying to serve? Because if we're going to serve over 50 people, it's going to be more of assembly. But if it's under or less than 50, then it's going to be a business. So let's say the client says there's 40 people. We're going to review back to table 104.1, and we're going to look at the load factor for business. Remember, you can go back to table 104.1. We can turn here. Okay, so we look at this and we know it's a business. All right, looking back at table 104.1.2, and we're looking down and saying, where is business? And then when we find the business here, it says business areas 100 gross. Okay, so now we're going to go back to that occupant load. We learned about occupant loads last time, right? So we can adjust the formula, 40 people times 100 gross square feet. I've got 4,000 square feet of floor area that I can utilize. So now let's go to the building size table. Here we're going back. And if we're thinking of future plans, maybe adding an additional 1,000 square feet to account for additional personnel, storage, and kitchen and stuff like that. But I'm not going to go up to over 50 people. Then what size or what building type can I use? And how big can it be? Okay, so we're looking at our building type. We know stories, well, these are huge, but I only need, 4,000 square feet or less. So, I could build that out of type 5B, go 2-story, and I could have 9,000 square feet. Not that I would need that much, but it's telling you what are your options of what type of construction type can you build within.